Is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I'm your host, Josh Harris. Rare to get 2 days in a row off like we did these past 2 days. Needed Cliffy with a moderate back injury, Josh with a mild back injury, too much driving. But how you feeling?
Yeah, feeling better. At least can walk around a little bit, go for little 15, 20-minute walks now. So working our way back. Day off yesterday. Thankful we had the day off yesterday. I went Christmas shopping. I wasn't around for lock. I probably would have played the Rangers last night. That would have been a mistake. Obviously, Jesper Bratt, Jack Hughes, I think, 7 points between them, 2 goals and 5 assists. Pretty good night for those two, or 3 goals and 4 assists, something like that. Pretty good night for those two. Dallas, I watched the second half of that Dallas-Utah game, was kind of slow, I guess. I don't know. Dallas doesn't seem like they're playing the same way they are last year, but that was yesterday. Today is today. 10 games on the docket. My boys, Montreal Canadiens, are getting Patrick Laine back. We'll talk about what that means when that game comes to it, or when we get to that game. And our boys, the Columbus Blue Jackets, on the road against Dan Vladash. That is going to be something to break down. So I actually really do like this slate. There are only a couple spots where I'm not really interested in at least one on the side. Like, there are a lot of teams I really do have interest in here tonight. So really looking forward to these games.
Yes, I am as well. I didn't play the Rangers last night, but I didn't play enough Devils. Rangers are a mess. No time to talk about it. Next time they're on the slate, we will talk about it. Let's get into the slate. Before we do, just wanted to extend a thank you to all you guys who sign up through our affiliate link. We'll never make you go premium, but if you do happen to want to go premium, you can click the link in the chat. Use promo code Stochastic15. That'll get you 15% off your first week or month of any subscription. So, that's our own personal 15% off for you. I don't have to read that. I'm not required to read it. I do it because you guys want 15% off, and we're man of the people. So let's get into the slate. Start with this doozy. Colorado Avalanche with a 3.5 total heading into Buffalo. The Sabres have a 2.9. Buffalo going Thompson, Tuck, Zucker, Peterka, Cousins, Benson, McLeod, Kulich, Quinn. Colorado going McKinnon, Rantanen, Lehkonen, Nishushkin, Middlestat, Kovalenko. Now, I was talking to Cliffy a little bit about this game before we went on the air. He was letting me know that Colorado had 5 power plays last game. Casey Middlestat was on for the first 3. After they went 0 for 3, they took Middlestat off and put Lehkonen on. Whether that sticks, we don't know. But if they split time, that Colorado top line would be fully correlated at 24,100. They would be the most expensive line on the night. They do have a lot of positive leverage, a 30.7% top 2 stack, 11.7% projected ownership. This is a really good spot. Now, there's 2 really expensive lines on the night. It would be he's awake already? Colorado 1 and Minnesota 1. Minnesota 1 is a little less than 24,000, but if I was going to spend up, it would be for Colorado 1 here, especially if Lehkonen does get power play one time. This is a pretty good spot here. Buffalo, I don't even know how to describe Buffalo here. Sometimes they play up to their opponents. Sometimes they play down to their opponents. Sometimes they look awful. Sometimes they look like Stanley Cup champions. Irregardless, McKinnon, Rantanen, and Lehkonen possibly fully correlated. That would be the spend-up line for me if I am going to go over 20,000. I haven't built yet, and there are a lot of cheaper lines that I do like, so I do think it's possible. I would go to Colorado 1. It is a 3.5 road total, the highest on the night. Only Carolina and the Capitals have higher road home total, so Colorado by far. The Panthers do have a higher road total, but 3.5 road total, extremely large, very good spot, very good power play spot. If I was going to spend up, it would be for Colorado 1. I think the Shushkin one-off is fine. Cliffy always mentions how he is one of the best power play scorers in the league. On the Buffalo side, I don't mind Cousins, Peterka, Benson as a filler. It is Georgiev in net. The goaltenders still have been awful. I don't love the Sabres, but I don't mind that Peterka, Cousins, Benson line as a filler. Thompson, Tuck, Zucker at 17-7 would be more MME for me. They're kind of priced in no man's land. They're not fully correlated, and they're going to get a fair bit of that McKinnon matchup. So Colorado 1, Buffalo 2 for me.
Yeah, I think it's pretty important to note the special teams matchup here. Obviously, Colorado typically has a very good penalty kill or power play. Sabres, one of the most penalized teams in the league over the last 4 weeks. Third most penalized team in the league over the last 4 weeks. Anyway, at 3.4 times short-handed per game. Only Utah and our Columbus Blue Jackets are higher. So second highest on this slate. If they give Colorado like 4 power plays, maybe 5 power plays, that feels like a recipe for a disaster. Worked out the other night for Edmonton, I guess, but Edmonton is not, or Buffalo is not Edmonton. The note on the Colorado power play with Nichushkin there is kind of important. I was looking over basically since the start of the 22-23 season, with Valeri Nichushkin on the top power play unit, the goal rate is like almost 2 full goals higher per 60 of 5-on-4 ice time. So one every 30 minutes, you're looking at, an extra power play goal like every 4 games. Like it's pretty significant jump. I mentioned on the last show, on Saturday's show, that Valeri Nichushkin is one of the best power play goal scorers in the NHL, like a legit top 10 guy over the last 4 years. So I do think this is a pretty good matchup for them on the power play. At 5-on-5, Buffalo's actually been good defensively at 5-on-5, especially with Dylan Cousins having JJ Peterka next to him Zach Benson, because Cousins has kind of struggled this year, but he's been a lot better with Benson. So now Buffalo actually has 2 top lines, or their top 2 lines, that are fine defensively. I still do like Colorado here. I think it's notable that they do have a 3.5 road total. And the total's gone up since this morning. Not much. It only went from 3.4 to 3.5, but their team total has gone up since this morning. There are a lot of goals expected here. And if that top line is now perfectly correlated, I really do like Colorado 1. Obviously, they're incredibly expensive. They're 24,100 on DraftKings, but a top 2 stack percentage over 30%. There are plenty of filler lines on the slate tonight that we'll get to. There are lines in Seattle, Calgary, Montreal, St. Louis. There really are a lot of filler lines you can go to. So I'm kind of considering Colorado 1 here. I think if you want to, and you do want to save some money, because Nichushkin is on the top power play, I think you'll find a swap out Rantanen for Nichushkin. It is notable that Nathan McKinnon has started shooting a lot more. 43 shot attempts in his last 3 games. I think it's more than he had in his prior 8 games combined. If he's turning back into the guy that he was the prior 2 seasons, as opposed to the first 2 months of this season, that is a pretty big change in his outlook. I really do like Colorado 1. On the Buffalo side, I have a little bit of interest in the Buffalo top line, but they're expensive, right? 17,700 with Jason Zucker there. It's not super pricey or anything, but Alex Tuch isn't on the power play. Jason Zucker really isn't a volume shooter. It's nice to have the power play correlation. I would probably dip down to the second line, Peterka, Cousins, and Benson. With Peterka and Cousins on the ice together this year, 63-42 shot attempt advantage per 60 for Buffalo. I think they're a fine filler stack. I do like the Colorado side here. I like Colorado 1 in this game.
Yeah, I do as well. Buffalo is more of MME for me. That filler line, the second line for Buffalo, would be more like if I needed a filler. I don't really want a game stack on this slate, but you can fit them with pretty much anybody. Detroit Red Wings with a 2.6 total. Heading into Boston, the Bruins have a 3.4 total. Patty Kane onto the IR, retro to whenever he was out last week. Is Ville Husso in net for the Wings? Their lines are Larkin, Raymond, Rasmussen, DeBrincat, Comfer, Mott, Tarasenko, Casper, Bergen. Boston going Pasternak, Zacha, Geeky, Marchand, Lindholm, Brazeau. I'll be quick on Detroit. The only line I'd have interest, even in MME, would be the top one. They're fully correlated at 13-8. Boston does take a lot of penalties. They have gotten much better defensively 5-on-5 since the beginning of the season. The goaltending has started to even out a little bit. So I'm not prioritizing them by any means, but a top line fully correlated at 13-8. If they happen to get into your optimizer, I think that is fine. No interest in the depth of Detroit. Boston's a little bit more interesting. That Lindholm, Marchand, Brazeau line has been pretty good. They're 13,600, 2.7% top to 3.6% projected ownership. I think that's fine. Get Lindholm and Marchand on the top power play unit. None of these Detroit lines are going to be any good defensively. I don't mind going to Lindholm, Marchand, Brazeau as a filler. 13.6 might be a little bit more than a filler, but they're cheap enough where you can fit them with anyone besides Colorado or Minnesota. Obviously, the Boston top line is the main event in this game. 16,900, 11.6% top two stack, 14.3% projected ownership. Like, I don't really love playing a Boston line almost 15%, but it is Ville Husso in net. He's been awful. He hasn't even been great in the AHL. That Boston line is going to get middle six matchups of the Wings, which is, once you get past that Cedar pairing, I think that's more important than the 5-on-5 lines. There's nothing there. I'm fine with Boston one here. The ownership's a little bit high. I think what you can do is go Zacha, Pasternak, leave off Geeky, and add in either one of Lindholm, Marchand, and make it a power play to make it a little less owned trio, even if the three of them are fairly high owned. So some sort of Boston power play stack. Fine with Boston 2 as a filler. Detroit 1 if you're making 20 to 150.
This game is about the Boston. Like, I have no interest in Detroit. I'm just going to skip over them. This game's about the Boston power play guys for me for two reasons. One, Detroit has an awful penalty kill. It's been that way basically all season. It's gotten to the point where a couple Detroit bloggers I follow, there's one guy, Prashanth Iyer, he went back to watch every single Detroit penalty kill this season to figure out just why they're so bad. And let me tell you, from personal experience, having done that with the Ottawa Senators over the summer, you have to be a special kind of bad to have anybody interested in watching every single one of your penalty kills to figure out where everything's gone wrong. Now, Boston really hasn't had a good power play. This is what I'll mention, is Boston's top power play unit shooting about 6%. On the low end, they should be at about 12%. So I do think that there's a little bit of positive regression, maybe a lot of bit of positive regression that's going to come for that power play at some point. Figures like going up against a bottom three penalty kill like Detroit's is a pretty good spot for that to happen. Boston, they've been above average in drawing power play opportunities per game over the last month. Going up against that bad penalty kill, there are no 5-on-5 matchups that I'm super concerned about. Like, obviously, you don't want to run into the Cedar-Edvinsson pairing, but honestly, with Ville Husso in net, I think that kind of negates any advantage that defensive pair might have. So, there are some chalky spots on the board here tonight. This is one that I don't mind playing. Pasternak, Zacha, and Geeky have legitimately been good so far this season. 3.3 expected goals, 3.7 actual goals per 60 at 5-on-5 in about 100 minutes together. I know Pasternak's been on kind of a cold streak. He's been pretty inconsistent. I was looking at his game logs. He'll have 13 shot attempts, then 4, and then 11, and then 5, and then 14, and then 3. And it's just a lot of stuff like that, which I find kind of weird, but it's a really good matchup for them at 5-on-5, a really good matchup for them on the power play. If you want to take off Geeky and put in Marchand, I think that's fine. Marchand's been shooting the puck quite a bit. That's one of the things that is kind of sticking out to me about the Boston Bruins this season, just in general. is like Marchand's just under 3 shots per game, which is a pretty drastic improvement from the 2.5 shots he had last year. So I think you're fine taking off Geeky and putting in Marchand and just making it more of a full power play stack. But it's the Boston side I like. It's Boston one in particular, but specifically, it's just any of the Boston power play guys that I like in this matchup.
Yep. New York Islanders with a 2.9 total heading into Montreal. The Canadiens have a 2.7. This is a 5.5 total. There are 2 more on the slate. Despite it being a 5.5 total, there is a ton of ownership on the Islanders. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Both the Islanders lines are around 13,000. They both have a 4.5% top 2 stack, and they're both projected for 12% or more. Since they're eerily similar, I'm going to go to the better line, and that's Nelson, Palmieri, Siplikov. I have no interest in playing the Horvat line at almost 13%. If you want to do that, giddy up, Cowboy. I will not. The second line has been better. They're fully correlated. This is a very good power play spot. I don't love them. But again, like I just said, I would play, if I was making 20 to 150, I'd play the Wings top line fully correlated at 13.8. If I'm willing to play the Wings top line fully correlated at 13.8, I am obviously willing to play the Islanders second line 13.4 fully correlated at 13.4. It's just, there's a lot more ownership on the Islanders. You won't see me with Islanders in my lineup. It's just, I won't play Islanders chalk, but they are fully correlated in an excellent spot. Would be Islanders 2 over Islanders 1. Montreal side, pretty spicy. I don't think I'll get there in single entry, but let's talk about it anyway. Caulfield, Suzuki, Newhook at 15.2. Like, they're all right. They're kind of priced. The problem is kind of like their price, right? So, like, they're more than a filler, less than expensive. You know what I mean? 1.2% projected ownership. If you're making mid-range stacks in MME, I think they're fine. Not a huge fan of Montreal 1 in single entry. Montreal 2 is interesting just because of their price, right? And you get Slavkovsky and Patrick Laine on the top power play unit, Doc on the second unit. They're 11,300, 0.3% top 2, 0.3% projected ownership. So coming right in their top 2 stack. They are a filler. They are getting Laine back. I have no idea what to expect with Laine. That being said, if they get middle 6 matchups of the Islanders, like the Nelson matchup isn't great, but if they see a fair bit of that Pajot, McLean, Wallstrom matchup, that is advantage Montreal. Like, I'm not running out to play them, but 11,300 for a Laine line where like Laine could be back to how he was. It's worth the gamble to me. The more lineups I'm making, I don't think I'll get there in single entry, but like if he's the player he was a few years ago, this line will be like $15,000 overnight. So I'll take a stab on them in MME. Not going to prioritize anything in this game. Islanders second line would be my favorite line. If you want to play the Islanders chalk, be my guest. They're a great play, but I just won't do it.
Yeah, just a quick note on the Islanders. Last game, they took Siplikov off the power play and put Anders Lee on. So now Lee, Horvat, top power play. Nelson, Palmieri, also top power play. That, because I was thinking of the same as you, is like, I'd probably just go back to the Brock Nelson line. But now that Lee's on the power play, it kind of changes things a little bit for me. Because it's funny. I was looking up relative performances this season, like how players have done relative to their teammates. There are 4 forwards in the league with 250 minutes played at 5-on-5 that are plus 20% by relative goal share and plus 10% by expected goal share. 2 of them are in Columbus, Marchenko and Monahan. One of them is actually Philip Hedl, and the other's Anders Lee. I thought that maybe it was just like he's getting a little bit lucky or something like that. I looked at some of the, like, I'd call them like holistic evaluations, like taking all the parts of the game and trying to evaluate them, like at Hockey Biz or Evolving Hockey or whatever. He's legitimately been a top line forward this season. It's weird because He's had that knee surgery a couple of years ago. He's certainly getting older, but he has played extremely well, and he has been good with Horvat. That's what stuck out to me. 3 expected goals, 3.7 actual goals per 60. I wish it wasn't Simon Holmstrom.
Anyone but Simon Holmstrom.
Well, the thing is like, who else are you going to put up there? Like, I know they had Pajot, but they want him back on the third line, which I kind of understand. So if you're not going to use Pajot, you're down to Oliver Wahlstrom, Casey Cizikas, Matt Martin, Pierre Engvall. Like, there's just it's a tough sledding, man.
Call up Josh Ho-Sang. Oh, he's definitely not on the team anymore.
No, I'm pretty sure he's in Europe now.
Yeah, he's in Uzbekistan in the mountains skiing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I would probably go to the Horvat line just because Lee is getting that power play time. Like that, I think that kind of tips the balance for me because Siplikov really doesn't do a whole lot. Nelson's fine as a one-off, I think. But, Lee shoots. Horvat gets a lot of ice time. Holmstrom is whatever. I think they're fine to play. I can tell you right now, I'm not playing Islanders chalk tonight. That's just, they just won't be in my lineup, but it would be the Horvat line I have interest in. On the Montreal side, I just talked about that Islanders bottom 6. The Islanders bottom 6 is terrible, like legitimately terrible. They are being carried by the top half of the roster to whatever success that they're having. McLean is bad. Wahlstrom is bad. Cizikas is bad. Martin is bad. They're all terrible. They don't have good results this season. They have nothing. I don't think the Doc Slafkovsky line is going to see very much of the Horvat line at the least. So I think they're going to get some bottom 6 matchups. Now, Patrick Laine is probably a better playmaker than he gets credit for. I was looking at his assist rate over the prior 3 seasons, and it's like 83rd percentile among regular forwards. So like a mid first line forward assist rate at 5-on-5. He carries the puck a lot. He's good at finding his teammates for shots. He is a 30 goal scorer, but I think he's also good at setting up his teammates. What I worry about is rust. Remember, he got hurt in the middle of December last year and then went into the player assistance program and then got injured in preseason. He hasn't played an NHL regular season game in almost a full year. And he's coming off that knee injury. I just think it's a lot to ask for him. I would probably go to the Doc Slafkovsky line, if anything, on the Montreal side. But I'm going to be honest, I'm not super jazzed about playing either side of this game.
Yeah. Florida Panthers, 3.6 total. Heading into Pittsburgh, the Penguins have a 2.8. Start on the Pittsburgh side, they're running Crosby, Rust, Raquel, Malkin, Tomasino, Drew O'Connor. The only line I'd have interest in is Pittsburgh 1. However, they are the most expensive line in this game at $19,700 going against the Barkov line. I won't say no because that Crosby, Rust, Raquel line has been excellent, but I am probably going to cross them out in single entry. They do have positive leverage, 2% projected ownership to an 8% top 2 stack. If I was MMEing, if I was making 20 lineups, I'd have 1 or 2 Pittsburgh ones just because they've been so good at 5-on-5 offensively. But my interest is on the Florida side here. I think you can go to either of the top 2 lines. I slightly prefer Bennett, Verhaeghe, Tkachuk, but if you slightly prefer Barkov, Reinhart, Rodriguez, go ahead. Like, they're both in really good spots, and you save $1,600 with that Barkov line. The reason I'm going to Bennett, Verhaeghe, Tkachuk is Reinhardt's slightly more power play dependent, and this isn't the best power play matchup. So I want Bennett, Verhaeghe, Tkachuk. Again, you want to go to Florida 1 because that Crosby line has been trading chances at best, but none of these lines are good defensively. I will just slightly edge out to the Bennett, Verhaeghe, Tkachuk line.
Yeah, this is an interesting game. This morning, Florida was at a 3.4 team total. Now they're at 3.6. Pittsburgh was at a 2.7 team total. Now they're at 2.8. The over-under in this game has gone from 6 to 6.5. There's obviously some goals expected here. Also, they're not using Crosby primarily in a shutdown role. I was looking at the ice time for that Vancouver game last week. Only basically 1 out of 3 shifts against the Pettersson line at 5-on-5. That's not really hard matching at all. It seems like they're kind of rolling their lines. So I'm not really looking for any specific matchup here. What I will note is two things. One, Sergei Bobrovsky isn't starting at Spencer Knight. And Spencer Knight's been better this year. Sergei Bobrovsky has not been good. He's just not. I think it's like an 890 save percentage. Even in a league where the league average is 900, he's on a defensive team where it should be better. And Spencer Knight is at 911 save percentage. So, Spencer Knight, it took him a couple years. He's back in the NHL now. Obviously, he had off-ice issues, personal issues that he had to deal with. It took him out away from the game. But, a few years ago, he was possibly the highest touted prospect goalie in the NHL, or in the minor leagues or whatever, maybe number 2 behind Askarov. This is a guy that is supposed to be the number 1 goalie of the future for this team, and he's played pretty well to start this season. So it takes me out a little bit from the Pittsburgh side. If anything, from the Penguins, it would be just the top line. Crosby, Rust, and Raquel, obviously they've been very good in their limited sample together. 4.3 expected goals, 4.3 actual goals per 60 at 5-on-5, only about 55 minutes, not a lot, but Crosby and Raquel had success. Besides that, they're all in the power play. What I will note is that Florida's penalty kill, I think it's 14 or 15 games now, basically bottom 10 in the league. I don't really know what's going on, but they're giving up a lot of shots. Not that Pittsburgh's power play is any good, but if you're 20 maxing 150, I think there is some merit to playing Pittsburgh 1 here. Other than that, I don't have a lot of interest in the Penguins. The interest for me is on the Florida side. Whichever line you want to go to, I don't think the 5-on-5 matchups matter because they're not hard matching. I don't think the power play penalty kill matchups really matter. Florida's power play is one of those power plays where when it's rolling, it's good enough to beat anybody. It's not one where I'm super concerned about the quality of the penalty kill on the other side, unless, we're talking like a Carolina or something like that. For me, what it comes down to is that Florida's been drawing a ton of power plays. Over the last 4 weeks, they've drawn the most power plays per game in the league at 3.9. No other team is higher than 3.5. So if they get 4 or 5 power plays, I don't really care if Pittsburgh even has a decent penalty kill. Florida can get there. I would go to Reinhart, Barkov, Rodriguez, just because they're cheaper and get more ice time, right? That's just kind of it. Even as ice time has come up for Matthew Tkachuk, he's still 18 and a half minutes, whereas Barkov and Reinhart are usually 20 plus. So I would go to Florida 1 here in this game. They are 18,000, perfectly reasonable. 9.4% top 2 stack, 8.4% ownership. They've been scoring well, 4.7 goals per 60 together this season. Not worried about any of the matchups. It would be Florida 1 that I have interest in this game. I would probably just full stack. Evan Rodriguez revenge narrative. Why not?
Oh man, Narrative Street just is it's a never-ending street, but yeah. Main event of the evening. No, it's not really the main event, but it is an important game on the slate. The San Jose Sharks with a 2.4 total heading into Washington. The Capitals have the biggest total in the night at 3.9. Capitals going Strome, McMichael, Wilson, Dubois, Protas, Radish, Mangiapane, Eller, LaPerriere. Obviously, this game is about Washington 1 on the Washington side. Strome, McMichael, Wilson, they're fully correlated. They don't have a massive sample together, but McMichael and Wilson were excellent with Pierre-Luc Dubois. I don't think they'll have issue with Strome. They are coming in a little bit higher owned than their top 2, 12.1 to 12.6. That is minimal negative leverage. This is a great power play spot. The Washington power play has been better without Ovechkin. I'm in on Washington 1 here. I do worry that they will be higher owned than 12.6%. You'll probably see them pushing 20 in some single entry contest. Again, ownership doesn't really matter. If they're guys I want to play, the ownership doesn't matter. The ownership matters to me when I don't want to play them, like the Islanders. I just don't want to play 15% Islanders on the road. I'm completely fine with 15 to 20% Washington one here. There's plenty of ways to get different. There's 17-8. They're fully correlated. You want a really cheap 2-man if you're like power play stacking the Wild or the Avs or Oilers. I think Eller Mangiapane or LaPerriere Mangiapane. Fine. Like that second line of Dubois, Protas, Radish at 9,100, coming in 6x over their top two stack. Like, I'd rather just, go to that third line or just one off Mangiapane. But really, this is about Washington one for me. On the Sharks side, yes, Strome, Michael Wilson will be very good offensively, but Washington has not been very good defensively this season. Celebrini, Zetterlund, Eklund, 13,600, 3.4% top two, 5.1% projected ownership. I wish they were fully correlated. You're getting Celebrini on the top power play there. So, they're fine as a filler if you want to mix them in an MME. I'd lean more towards a Macklin Celebrini one-off. I don't mind the 2-man of Wenberg to Foley as a filler either. They're super cheap. There's no matchup that really bothers me. They're both on the top power play unit. Wenberg isn't the best DFS player, but he's cheap enough where, if he hits the score sheet once, he'll be fine. So don't mind Wenberg to Foley, one-off Celebrini, but this game's Washington one for me.
Yeah, I agree. I do like the Caps here. I also agree that I don't think they're coming at 12%. I do think it kind of pushes 20%, but even at 20%, I think that's just fine. A Strome, McMichael, Wilson top line is perfectly correlated, which is something we haven't gotten very much of from the Washington Capitals this year. San Jose has been taking fewer penalties, but their penalty kill still isn't very good. And you mentioned the Washington power play has been better. It's 20% more shot attempts per minute of power play time without Alex Ovechkin than with him. And they're scoring more often. So I do think we'll talk about defensemen at the end. With the way that Karlsson and Chychrun are both shooting the puck, Karlsson's getting a lot of ice time. I do think if I stack Washington, I probably include one of the top defensemen with it. So it makes the stack the per player average a little bit more expensive than if you use a $3,000 punt or something. But that Washington top line, I was looking at McMichael's numbers without Pierre-Luc Dubois so far this season, 3.6 expected goals, 5.4 actual goals. He's been really good with Dubois, with him and Wilson, but he's also been really good no matter where he's been. So I really do like Washington one here. They are one of my favorite lines on the board here tonight. The San Jose side, I do like the look of that San Jose top line. They are getting a lot of ice time, right? Zetterlund will probably be around 18 minutes. Even without top power play time, Eklund will probably push or crack 20 minutes, Celebrini as well. It's a lot of ice time for a fairly cheap price. And as you mentioned, Washington's strength this season has been offensively. It has not been defensively. I don't mind San Jose one here. I think for me, it'd be more 20 max or something, a single entry. I don't feel the need to play an over-owned San Jose line on the road. We'll get to our Columbus boys later. I think they're, that second line would definitely be in play. Mentioned the Colorado second line earlier, the Buffalo second line earlier. There are just some other lines in that price range I think I'd rather play. I kind of agree with you. I'd almost lean to Foley and Wenberg. 10,000 even if you include Luke Cunnin. I think they're one of those filler stacks you can put with Colorado or whatever, but just in general, this is a Washington game.
Yes, sir. Agreed. Seattle Kraken, a 2.7 total. Heading into Carolina, the Hurricanes have a 3.6 total. New Seattle lines. Holy moly. Jared McCann, Chandler Stevenson, Brandon Tanev. Wow. Jaden Schwartz, Matty Beniers, Yannick Gourde. Wow. Ely Tolvanen and Shane Wright, Oliver Bjorkstrand. Very nice, but this is a tough matchup for them. Carolina going Netchus, Aho, Robinson, Svechnikov, Roslovic, Drury, Jarvis, Martinook, Stahl. If this was any other matchup, I'd have some interest in Wright, Tolvanen, and Bjorkstrand. They're 8,800 for the three of them, but this is a pretty brutal matchup. maybe they see a fair bit of that second line. I don't know. Like for 8,800, if they happen to get into like one or two of your 100 lineups, whatever. But generally, I'm out on Seattle. Those top two lines are awful. Carolina, like, I don't love the Carolina lines either. Like Eric Robinson up on the top line. I guess like Netchus and Robinson have a pretty big sample together, and they're honestly not bad together. I would assume most of that's with Kotkaniemi and Drury. So like obviously like Aho is going to make them a little bit better. So like 17-5, like I guess it's fine. You get Aho and Netchus on the top power play unit, and Seattle's penalty kill has been awful. I don't mind Carolina 1. I don't think I'd prioritize them at 17-5. And then, like, the second line of Drury, Roslovic, Svechnikov, you get Roslovic and Drury on the second unit, Svechnikov on the top unit. So, like, that line is all right, I guess, but, like, I don't really love the makeup of it. Like, I think, honestly, like, the line that I like the best would be Stahl, Jarvis, Martinook at 11-4. Like, Stahl and Jarvis have had excellent numbers together for multiple seasons now. They're a filler line. They're coming in at 1.1%. They're going to see probably the Chandler Stevenson. Like, I don't even know what Carolina thinks is the top line there, but like, I can't imagine either of them being anything special defensively. So like, I don't mind Stahl, Jarvis, Martinook as a filler at 11-4. That's probably my favorite line in this game. I think Carolina 1's fine. It's hard to prioritize them at that price with Eric Robinson not being on the power play.
Yeah, I'm out on Seattle. I honestly, if Spencer Martin was starting, because we should mention Pyotr Kochetkov is back after it was like a week. Sean Walker ran into him, knocked him around a little bit. If it was Spencer Martin, I would be thinking about writing Bjorkstrand just because Colorado is really expensive. You do need to find some cheap players. They have been fine this year. I don't think Colorado's top two lines are that great defensively. I think it's just the Stahl line that has been. But Kochetkov in net does make a difference. Like Wright, Bjorkstrand are fine. I'm not running out to play them. But as we mentioned on the last show with Seattle, they have positive numbers together this year. I just worry that these Seattle lines don't last. Seattle's in full-blown panic mode. Like, let's just face it. I'd be more apt to play a one-off. For me, this is a Carolina game. I agree. Jarvis Martinook Stahl is fine, is good as a filler here tonight. 3 expected goals, 3 actual goals per 60 together this season. I'm kind of interested in that top line. Just because Necas and Robinson were really good offensively, 3 expected goals, 5.8 actual goals. Now, 5.8, that's shooting 16%. But they were generating so many shots that even if they're shooting like, 10%, they're still well above average offensively. And that was with Kotkaniemi. Now there was Sebastian Aho, right? They're going to get depth matchups from Seattle. Yes, Robinson isn't on the top power play. Seattle's penalty kill kind of sucks. Eric Robinson's also 2,700. He doesn't even need to score here. Like an assist with a couple shots is perfectly fine. I really do like Carolina 1. They are certainly one of the lines that I'm considering here tonight. Watch for who's starting for Seattle. They haven't named anybody. I suspect it's going to be Joey Decord because Grubauer got a game last week and they have a back-to-back coming up this weekend. But if they go to Grubauer again for some reason, I have a lot more interest in Carolina, certainly. But I do have interest in Carolina 1 here. I just think that Necas and Robinson showed well with a lesser center. Now, what are they going to do with a better center? We'll see what happens. But 17,500, especially with how cheap Robinson is, you don't need a lot from him. Seattle doesn't take a ton of penalties. They're one of the lower penalized teams, but their penalty kill is absolutely atrocious. I think Carolina can get there on the power play, even if they only get like 1 opportunity. I like Carolina 1 here. I think Carolina 3 is perfectly fine as a filler.
I'm kind of wondering like how much better they would be with Aho, because like with Kotkaniemi or Drury, it doesn't really matter because Netch's zone entries are so disgustingly good. Like, it would obviously help with the expected goals, maybe the actual goals, but like, I don't think Netch's was relying on Kotkaniemi or Drury to enter the zone. Like, Netch's is nasty entering the zone. But I don't know. That's just me talking to myself. Let's move on. Vancouver Canucks with a 2.5 total. Heading into Minnesota, the Wild have a 2.9 total. This is another one of the 5.5s on the slate. Minnesota, if they figure out their penalty kill, they would be the best defensive team in the league. Better than Carolina. Better than Winnipeg. Like, they're disgustingly good defensively at 5-on-5. Their penalty kill still sucks. It's sucked for like 4 years now with like 3 different coaches, so who knows what's going on there. I don't have a ton of interest in Vancouver here. Like, Pettersson, Besser, DeBrusque fully correlated is interesting, but like the price isn't. You know what I mean? Like, if they were in that Sharks range or even that $15,000 range, I'd say an MME, that's an interesting play, but there's 17,200. That's really expensive to rely on a power play. It's a pretty brutal matchup. Like, if you happen to get 1 or 2 in your MME mix, fine. Connor Garland one off, fine. But I'm not really prioritizing Vancouver here. The question is what to do with Minnesota 1. They're 13,700 or 23,700. Kaprizov, Boldy, Eriksson, Ek. It is Lankin in the net. 25% top 2, 7.8% projected ownership. I have a hard time paying up for Minnesota 1 here when Colorado 1 is only $400 more. You can make some sort of Colorado power play stack for less than Minnesota 1 if you leave off Rantanen. Like, they're fine, Minnesota 1. I would prefer Colorado 1. If you want to play them in MME, that's your prerogative. I think they're fine. As the spend-up options, I prefer Colorado 1. Like, Cliffy talks about how Kaprizov is so much better with Joel Eriksson Ek, and yeah, he is. It's just, that price, a little bit prohibitive when Colorado 1's right there. I think Minnesota 1's fine. MME only for me, not too much interest in Vancouver.
Here's the one thing that's kind of keeping me from really there's a couple things really keeping me from considering Vancouver or Minnesota, sorry. One of them is definitely Joel Eriksson Ek. He had a shot bonus on October 19th and hasn't had a DraftKings shot bonus since then, averaging like 2.4 shots per game over his last 18 games with only 12 points. None of that is good. You know what I mean? Especially considering a lot of it has been spent on the top line with Kaprizov, certainly on the top power play unit with Kaprizov. 6,100, it's a lot to ask. Like, he's 6,100 on DK, averaging 8.5 DK points this season. Sam Bennett is cheaper and averaging 12.6 DraftKings points on the per game this season. You know what I mean? Like, Eriksson Ek at 6,100 this time last year, perfectly fine. Eriksson Ek, based on what he's done in the first 2 months of the season, he is wildly overpriced. That's what kind of bothers me. Is like he should honestly be $2,000 cheaper than he is. I think a one-off Boldy is perfectly fine. A Kaprizov one-off is always fine. If you want to take off Eriksson Ek and put in Marco Rossi, because Rossi's actually outproduced him on a per-game basis so far this season and is $1,600 cheaper, I think that's kind of the way that I would go. Because Rossi is on the top power play unit. You save yourself $1,600 and you get a guy that's been outproducing Joel Eriksson Ek on a per game basis this year. I don't mind Minnesota, especially with Hronek out. Like, Vancouver has defensive issues. Like, with Hronek out, they have Quinn Hughes, elite, top 5 defenseman in the league. They have Eric Brandstrom, very underrated, very solid. I think he's a top 4 defenseman playing third pair minutes. Everyone else is terrible. It's a lot to ask to put the entire blue line on 2 defensemen. I don't mind Minnesota 1 here. I would take off Eriksson Ek and put in Rossi, but I agree with you. I would rather play Colorado. I think I'd be more inclined, if I'm going to the Minnesota side, to play a one-off than I would be to full stack anything. If it was Shelov's in net, I think it would be a different story, but it's not. Nothing for me from the Vancouver side. This is just an awful, awful matchup for them.
St. Louis Blues with a 2.3 total. Heading into Winnipeg, the Jets have a 3.2 total. We have to have one, so this is our only game sucks of the evening. Oh, okay. Let's try to get through these lines here. I don't know what Winnipeg did with their lines here. They're going Connor, Scheifele, Nemestikov, Velarde, Perfidi, Brad Lambert, who's not in the pool. And then the Winnipeg 3 is the same. St. Louis going Neighbors, Thomas Saad, Holloway, Shen, Kyrou. I have no idea what to make of these Winnipeg lines. I don't know if they're going to stick. I think if anything, if you need a cheap one-off on a power play, I think Perfidi's fine, or Gabriel Velarde one-off is fine. A 2-mana Perfidi Velarde. They're both on the top power play, I think is fine. I don't know what to make of that top line with Nemestikov there, with Scheifele on the wing at 19,100. I guess they're fine. I just am I going to bank my night in single entry on that line, which I have no faith in staying together for more than a period and a half? No. So I'm probably just taking one-offs from the Winnipeg side. On the Blues side, lowest total on the slate, 2.3. Thomas and Neighbors have been very good together this season. If anything, it would be that line in MME, but I don't really want the Blues here on the slate. I don't love this game at all.
Yeah, here I want to talk about, even though we're supposed to talk about forwards in this section, I want to talk about the Winnipeg defensemen real quick. I was looking at Josh Morrissey's numbers this year because I was thinking about the Team Canada Four Nations Cup, and Morrissey's on-ice results, shots against, expected goals against, all that, aren't really that good. I was looking at Dylan DeMello and his impact. Dylan DeMello has fallen completely off a cliff. Completely off a cliff. 2 seasons ago, you could have made an argument he was a low-end number 2 defensive defenseman. Last year, you could have made an argument he's probably a second-pair defensive defenseman. This year, does he belong in the NHL anymore? In 2 years, it's been a steep decline from being a very solid defensive defenseman to he probably should be taken out of the lineup. If it was just this season for a decline, I'd say maybe there's an injury, maybe he's adjusting to a new coach, et cetera, et cetera. But it's over the course of the last 2 years. So DeMello's actually making the Morrissey pairing a below average defensive pairing. That wasn't a huge problem with Dylan Sandberg healthy, because Sandberg was having a great season and carrying Neil Pionk to a lot of success. But now Sandberg's out. So I assume Neil Pionk is going to go back to being the overrated guy he's been for a long time now. The top pair has been not good. And the third pair is Logan Stanley, who also shouldn't be in the NHL, and Ville Heinola, who's came back a week ago from a serious injury and has been largely kept in the AHL because the team doesn't trust him. What the hell is this defense going to look like for the next few weeks until Sandberg gets back? The problem is that it's the St. Louis Blues. Honestly, if it was 25 other teams on the road here tonight, I would probably be playing the team on the road, because I don't think that this Winnipeg team, with DeMello playing as poorly as he is, with Sandberg out of the lineup, with Stanley sucking ass, this is a bad defensive group, and they're now, and the forwards are now missing their best play driving forward in Nikolai Ehlers. I think Winnipeg is a bit of a hot mess here. The problem is that St. Louis is just not a good team, by any stretch. Basically, if this was Anaheim, I would be considering Anaheim here tonight. If this was San Jose on the road, I would probably be playing San Jose 1. I just don't have any faith in St. Louis, even if they won a few games since firing their coach. Like they just can't create anything on the power play. They struggle creating a 5-on-5. Like I guess for me on the St. Louis side, I would probably go to Kyrou, Shen, and Saad. They are more expensive. Kyrou's probably the best offensive player that they had. Him and Shen have been creating a little bit of offense so far this year, 3.1 goals per 60 in nearly 100 minutes together. Kyrou and Shen are on the top power play. I just don't have a lot of faith in St. Louis. I wish I did. I wish this was the exact scenario at this time last year when St. Louis top line was playing well, because I would have absolutely been playing the Blues here tonight. On the Winnipeg side, I really don't want to play anything from the Winnipeg side. I really don't. Honestly, if anything, I would be most tempted in Lowry, Niederreiter, and Appleton. I'm pretty sure they're going to get at least second line minutes here tonight. They're not going to give Brad Lambert 18 minutes or whatever, right? They're not going to give Cole Perfetti's on the top power play unit and played like 14 minutes last game. Lowry, Niederreiter, and Appleton are going to get a lot of ice time. They're priced as a filler. You can put them in with your Colorado or Minnesota or whatever. That's probably the only thing I really have any interest here tonight, is using Lowry, Niederreiter, and Appleton as a filler in lineups where you're using Colorado or Minnesota.
Yeah, these lines are just atrocious. So let's get to the main event. With the final two, these are like the actual main events of the evening. Our boys, the Columbus Blue Jackets, with a 3 total, heading into Calgary. The Flames and the Fighting Danny Vladars have a 3.4 total. Some heavy ownership here on Calgary. Sharangovich back on Coronado at 11.8 with 15% projected. Kadri Kuzmenko Pospisil 10,400 at 14.5% projected ownership. That is a lot of ownership for a Flames team. Now, the Blue Jackets take a boatload of penalties. Their penalty kill sucks. That's why, I get the ownership, but at the same time, I don't really get the ownership, because back on Sharangovich Coronado, 15% projected, going to go out at 5-on-5 against Monahan, Marchenko, Voronkov, a bunch. And with that, it'll be Werenski. Yes, the Sharangovich back on Coronado line has been excellent, but so has Monahan, Marchenko, Voronkov. So, at 15%, do I really, really want to play back on Sharangovich Coronado on the slate? Not really. The problem is that kind of also takes me out on Monahan, Marchenko, Voronkov, though, at 17-1. Yes, they are one of the best lines in the league. They go out a lot with Werenski. Their expected goals are great. But that back on Sharangovich Coronado line, the sample's getting better. They've legitimately been good at both ends of the ice. And it's not like we're getting the Jackets top line at 14.5 like they were not even a week ago. You're 17,100 here. I think they're fine because it's Vladar net, but I don't think I can prioritize them as much as I want to in single entry. It would be Ken Johnson, Fantilli, Cole Sillinger at 13.6. You can do whatever you want with Cole Sillinger, but he is on the top power play unit for whatever that's worth. No, he's not. It's Ken Johnson on the top power play unit. I think I would just two-man Fantilli and Ken Johnson here. They're going to avoid that back-home matchup. After that, there really isn't anything that worries me defensively. So for me, it would be Columbus too. That Calgary back-home line is fine, but that ownership is just way too much for a pretty bad 5-on-5 matchup. You want to go to Kadri Kuzmenko Pospisil at 10-4. They're a filler. Fine, but that ownership is just extreme too. I think if anything on Calgary, it'd be Coleman, Zara, Huberdeau, just because they're the lowest owned. But I know Columbus has a terrible penalty kill, but that ownership just is pretty high for a Calgary team that just is not good. So I don't really love the Flames here.
Just one note: right before we came on the air, Calgary said that they're scratching Andrei Kuzmenko, and it looks like they're going to put Huberdeau up with Kadri. It's kind of interesting in a way, because I think Huberdeau can help Kadri score, and they're at 2.9 expected goals in 200 minutes together last year, Obviously haven't played much together this year. The thing with Sharon Govich, Backlund, Coronado, it's not a great matchup against that Columbus top line. The Columbus top line, 2 expected goals against per 60 so far this year. One, Columbus is taking it ass load of penalties. 3.6 times shorthanded per game over the last month. They're up near the top over the last 6 weeks. Basically, since the first week of the season, they're one of the most penalized teams in the league. The penalty kill has not been good. And here's the thing. I was looking at Calgary's power play. Their shots are up 24% since they took Kadri off the power play unit. The power play has been a lot better for the Flames. They are coming in with a lot of ownership. 14.3% for Sharon Govich, Backlund, Coronado. They have been dominating the play. It is a tough matchup. I would probably rather play the Sharon Govich Backlund line than play any of the Islanders lines. I'll tell you that right now. Similar going for a cheaper price. I think you can go to Kadri, Huberdeau, Pospisil. They're going to be coming in with even more ownership, if you can believe that. I would probably want to focus on the line where you get at least 2 guys on the top power play unit. That's the Sharon Govich line, Sharon Govich, Backlund, Coronado. I do have a little bit of interest in them just because their team total has gone up from 3.2 to 3.4. The power play has been better without Kadri. They're in a very good power play spot. It's one of the few times they're going to be in a good power play matchup. Columbus's goaltending has generally struggled pretty hard this year, especially over the last month. Among those over-owned fillers, the Sharon Govich line is at the top of the pile for me. Columbus side, it is a tough matchup. 17,100 is a lot to pay, but they have been very good. 3.3 expected goals per 60 with Voronkov there. It's 3.4 when they had Chinnikov there. They've been great no matter who's been on the top power play unit. If 20 max, 150, I would have more interest in Columbus 1. Columbus 2, I think, is playable. What I will kind of say is that Columbus 3 is a little interesting to me. Danforth and Olivier sometimes get decent minutes. Zach Aston-Reese has been fine this year. They're just priced in a spot where you can play them with Colorado. You can play them with Minnesota. That Calgary fourth line is legitimately one of the worst fourth lines in the league, and they're going to get some ice time against them. It is still Dan Vladash in net. So that Columbus third line, I think if you're playing Colorado or Minnesota here tonight, is one of those depth lines that you can consider. This is kind of a mess of a game. I still haven't figured out. I'm probably going to have some piece of it. Maybe it's just defensemen. But I don't want to just ignore this game because of ownership or matchups or whatever. It's a 6.5 total. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Your argument about the Backlund line, I might have to go back and reconsider. We'll see. Let's get to the last game of the night here. Edmonton Oilers with a 3.4 total heading into Vegas. The Golden Knights have a 3.1 total. This is an interesting one. There are issues on both sides here. Let's start on the Vegas side. Through December 1st. This is from J Fresh Hockey on X or Blue Sky, wherever you follow him on your social. Here are the 5 worst teams at 5-on-5 for expected goals against per 60. This is worst to 5th worst. Canadiens, Ducks, Penguins, Sharks, Rangers. Right above the Rangers is the Vegas Golden Knights. They have been bad defensively. Bad. Eichel, Dorofeyev, Barbashev. We talked about it when they played Utah on the last slate. We really like Vegas because of the power play, but man, they play pond hockey. And if you're going to play pond hockey against Connor McDavid, that could be bad news bears. I like McDavid, Nugent Hopkins, Kapanen here. You want to go really expensive and leave off Kapanen and play Draisaitl, that's fine. But Vegas's penalty kill is bad too. They just don't take penalties, which is kind of the issue. So like I don't mind full stacking that Edmonton top line because that Vegas top line has been legitimately up and down the ice every time they're out there. So I'm good with McDavid, Nugent Hopkins capping in here. It's 17,000. How often can you get a McDavid line at 17,000 coming in right at their top 2 stack? That would be where I'd focus on the Edmonton side. You want to go to Edmonton to Draisaitl, Puck, Coles, and Brown. Like that's all right, but like I would prefer the McDavid line there. On the Vegas side, like Eichel, Dorofeyev, Barbashev, for the same reasons I just mentioned, they play absolute pond hockey. I would have some interest in them. They're more of an MME type play for me because they're 18,800 with a lower top 2 stack than the Edmonton line. Excuse me, way less ownership, but I'd rather save the 1,800 and go with the McDavid line. That's just personal preference. Like I like Vegas here. I don't love them. I don't mind Hurdle Roy again as a filler. I know they've let a lot of people down recently, but they've played well together. They're cheap enough where they hit the score sheet once and they're fine. Like I know Edmonton has their concerns offensively, but if you can get a McDavid line going up against the team that trades chances for 17,000, I'll take the risk there. Edmonton won for me.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of interest in the Vegas side. One thing I will mention is that William Karlsson did jump to the top power play unit last game. He's 5,700. He makes sense as a one-off, I think, for me, just because of the power play time. He does get a lot of even strength time. I don't have a lot of interest in stacking Vegas, especially where the second line doesn't really have any power play correlation anymore. And the top line, I think the top line is playable. Don't get me wrong. 3.1 expected goals, 4 actual goals per 60 since they added Dorofeyev to the top line alongside Eichel and Barbashev. 2 out of the 3 guys on the top power play unit. Thing is like at 18,800, I would probably rather play Florida. You know what I mean? I would certainly rather play Washington. They'll have a lot higher ownership, obviously, but I'd still rather play Washington. Probably rather play Carolina. There are just other lines in that price range I'd have a little bit more interest in. I think for me, if I'm playing Vegas tonight, I'd have more interest in like one-off Hurdle, one-off Karlsson, those types of things in full stacking. I agree with you. It's the Edmonton top line for me. Small sample, but Kapanen and McDavid have found a little bit of success so far. 35 minutes together, 69 shot attempts per 60, 5.5 actual goals per 60. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins still getting the power play time. Vegas' penalty kill, we always say not very good. Edmonton's power plays kind of struggled this season. Been scoring some goals since Zach Hyman got hurt. I like the Edmonton side better. For me, this is about Edmonton 1. I think, again, if you want to take off Kapanen and put on Draisaitl or focus on the power play or whatever, I think that's just fine. But I agree with you. For me, it's Edmonton 1. On the Vegas side, I'm more interested in some one-offs.
I have a couple extra minutes because my wife is going to pick up Avery, so nice of her. Let's talk a little bit about defensemen before we do. Again, there's almost 400 of you in here watching on Twitter or YouTube. Just want to say thank you again for all your support via the affiliate signups, just being here, liking the video, et cetera, will never make you go premium. That's not how we roll. But if you are interested in going premium, you click the link that the Stochastic bot just put into the chat. You can use promo code Stochastic15. That'll get you 15% off your first week or month of any subscription. That's our personal code as a thank you to you. So go check that out if you do want to go premium. You could do NHL. Got a great UFC pay-per-view this weekend. NFL is in the late stages. NBA. I almost said MLB, but let's pump the brakes. It's December 3rd. Let's talk about some defensemen here. Top of the board. I can't remember the last time I've seen an $8,600 defenseman. I think it was Brent Burns on the Sharks. Talk about a fall from grace, man. We don't even mention Brent Burns anymore, but Cal McCarr, Zach Werenski, Quinn Hughes, all 8K or above. Like that price on Werenski is really steep. I still think he's fine. He's playing an absolute truckload of minutes. Obviously, Makar would be number one for me. I don't really love Quinn Hughes here at 8K. It's just a brutal matchup. Bouchard at 7K. Like, I wish he shot the puck a little bit more. But if you are playing Edmonton, this is a decent matchup. I wish Vegas took more penalties, but again, like, whatever. I do like Mackenzie Weegar at 6,500. This is a very good power play spot. That would be about it in the top range. Obviously, right below the top range, you have the Washington power play guys, which Cliffy will get to. But for me, it would be Makar 1, Werenski 2, Weegar 3, Bouchard 4 in the top range.
Yeah, stochastic projections have Werenski and Makar basically neck and neck, only separated by $300. I don't think there's a specific rhyme or reason to going to one or the other tonight. I will just say, like, if I was playing like a cheap Columbus stack or something, I would be kind of tempted to just add Werenski with them. I think my preference is Makar. I do like Colorado better here tonight. They have the bigger total. Makar still plays a ton of minutes, but I think both are certainly perfectly fine. After them, for me, it's probably Mackenzie Weegar. Again, this is a really good power play matchup for Calgary. The power play has been better since, as I mentioned, since they took Kadri off of it, and Weegar can both shoot and block shots. So Weegar for me amongst the expensive guys. Mid-price range, Jared Spurgeon still running the power play for Minnesota. I think he definitely should get a mention here. Darnell Nurse, he's shooting a lot. He's blocking shots. I mentioned to you the other day, he has one of the highest zone entry rates in the NHL this season amongst regular defensemen. Like, I'm talking Quinn Hughes, Roman Josi territory. It's absolutely bonkers. So at least he's getting involved. Whether that's actually a good thing for Edmonton, I think is a different debate entirely, but certainly not bad for his DFS value. Really do like Charlie McAvoy here tonight. Something I noticed looking at some of the tracking data from all three zones about Charlie McAvoy, his playmaking has been a lot better this year. Again, it's one of those situations like, does that actually help Boston? I'm not sure, but he's certainly turned around his game over the last month or so. Yeah, I do like both Washington defensemen, Chychrun and Karlsson. In general, I'll lean Karlsson. I'll just pay up. I think it's an extra $700 because he usually plays 2, 3, 4 extra minutes than Chychrun does, but I think both are perfectly fine. If you're looking to pay down a little bit, obviously Aaron Ekblad, power play time, Chris Letang, not a bad matchup to rack up peripherals for him here tonight. Noah Hannafin, same kind of deal for him. Bowen Byram, Colorado visiting Buffalo, if you like those revenge narrative type things. Bowen Byram, he's also been playing a lot of minutes. Jamie Oleksiak might have to block a lot of shots here tonight for Seattle with them going into Carolina. Kind of the same thing for Caden Gooley at home against the Islanders. There's not a lot for cheap defensemen I like here. I think Brett Kulak at 2,900 is fine for Edmonton. Tyler Myers been playing 21 minutes-ish since Hronek got hurt, so I think he's perfectly fine as well. Jalen Chatfield, he's always in play for me. Andrew Peeke getting decent ice time. Timothy Liljegren getting secondary power play minutes, but there's not a ton in that sub 3K range I like here tonight, honestly, other than like Kulak and Myers.
Yeah, I don't really love it either. Not that I ever love it, but I always punt defensemen, and I just hope that you get a bonus. Let's talk about goaltenders. Why? I don't know. The top end tonight in the expensive range is just a scene. I'll just mention the guys in the 8K range here. It's Logan Thompson, Joonas Korpisalo, Connor Hellebuyck, Pyotr Kochetkov, Alex Georgiev, and Dan Vladar. Wow. Like, Hellebuyck is fine because he's one of the best goalies in the league. That defensive pairings, maybe he sees more volume because of it. I don't mind Hellebuyck. The other one I'd spend up for is Pyotr Kochetkov, but the other guys I don't particularly love. Philip Gustafsson, 7,800. I don't mind Spencer Knight at 7,800 as well. If you're spending down, like Montembeault at 7,500 interests me. Joel Hofer, just because those Winnipeg lines are just atrocious. And like, If it's Decord, I would have interest in him. If it's Grubauer, no interest there. Blackwood, if you want to live dangerously, is always in play for a saves bonus at 6,900. But like if it's Decord, I don't think I'd get below Decord.
Yeah, there are the three expensive goalies I was looking at, like basically above 7,500. Were Philip Gustafson from Minnesota, Spencer Knight from Florida, and Connor Hellebuck from Winnipeg. I think those are kind of the three spend up options I was looking towards. Hellebuck is number 1 in projections. Gustafson is number 4, and Knight is number 6 over on Stochastic here tonight. So those three are among the top 6 projections. I think there's a few cheap goalies I do like. Certainly Merzlikins on the road against Calgary. Merzlikins hasn't played well, but again, Calgary has a tough time generating shot quality sometimes, not necessarily shot quantity. So if there's a road game where you could rack up some saves, I think this is definitely one of them. Sam Montembeault at home for Montreal. I think he's fine at 7,500, but again, like you said, if Joey Decord starts for Seattle, I don't mind. Like Joey Decord would probably be the guy at 7K on the road going into Carolina. Just got to keep an eye on warmups.
Yep. We will be back Thursday. Or are we back tomorrow? I don't know. It's a 4-gamer. We'll have to see what the GPPs look like.
Yeah.
If not, we'll be back on Thursday. Who you liking for your hat trick pick?
Yeah, tomorrow the GPPs aren't looking bad. 10K to first for the $15 40K prize pool. We'll see what happens. I don't know. I'm gonna go chalk. Screw it. Yegor Sharangovich.
We go with Marty Netjes. That's who I'm going with. His zone entry is just disgusting. Torched the Rangers in that playoff series, just skating around Trouba. Everyone skates around Trouba. I don't want to talk about the Rangers right now. We'll see you either tomorrow or Thursday. Good luck, everybody. See you then.
Good luck tonight, everyone.